Thanks for listening to me. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce to you the Mobility House. We have, of course, the ambition to grow it very fast. We are in early stages. The business that we do, I'd like to explain to you. Myself, I'm Christian Ahlefeld. I'm an investor in the company and a CFO. Going to the first page, maybe you can see that we are a 2009 founded company, so rather young. We have an office in Munich, that was already mentioned, but we also are located in Bern and in Salzburg, which is from a legacy business that we started. Our first ambition was to bring mobility, e-mobility, to everyone. We started in Salzburg, and therefore Salzburg AG is also an investor with us. I will revisit that. We now are focusing mainly on OEMs, i.e. on the car companies. That's, of course, BMW in Munich. That's just walking across the street. But we're very happy to supply our services, which is mainly a solution for the after-sales business when a customer has bought a car that's electric-driven, and that car has a plug, so you can charge it from the plug from other sources from outside. There is a technology with that, that's a charging station, and we do everything from the salesperson that persuaded the car user to buy the car, from that on that there will be people coming to your home or to the garage looking at what your technical situation is. They will then put a charging station there, and of course with a charging station you got your gasoline station, so to speak, in your own house, and you have a plug, and you can secure, safely, conveniently charge at home or in the offices. So we do that service, which is really a whole process for BMW and for 9 other OEMs, and are very well positioned. It's not only in Germany, it is also across Europe, so the ambition is the European marketplace. The services provided go one step further, and I will come to that. It's a two-element approach. Once we have once we have a car, that's an electricity car and can be charged. Once we have the charging station, cars are plugged in, not only in one house and one office, but in many. And then you have vehicle to grid, and you have a swarm. You have many cars, and many cars are a power station by themselves, a virtual power station. So that's our business idea, 2 elements. You can see that in 2009 we did start the company on the vision that you will get a car or a bicycle or any other mean that's electrically driven. That was a capital-intensive approach. Salzburg AG was our first investor, so they had money and the ambition, and they are a showcase for Europe for electric mobility, so we were well suited there to help them with their idea. But as it was very capital intense, it wasn't really for us to grow very much outside the box. We then decided that that's a too heavy capital intensive business, let's move on. And we found that focusing on the OEMs, trying with them to establish the process, helping them in a completely new world, because all the car dealers, as you probably would imagine, know what a combustion engine is, what horsepowers are, what acceleration is, gear shifting systems, everything you need in a traditional car. But I'm a little bit lost when it comes to what is a kilowatt hour translating into, and what are the various currents, and what do I have to observe when it comes to charging, and how do I do that? All that process is taught with us, with those dealerships, and we are implanted in their own systems, so they use their PCs. On the PC, there's a screen that pops up. This is the Mobility House screen, and then the salesperson is led through the process step by step. Everything is initiated. Also, the visits to the house are planned. The charging stations will be brought there, will be positioned, and it's all check-marked process and proven. So they can be rest assured that once the car is driven out of their selling site, the rest of the services will be done in a professional and approved form. You can see that if you move down the history, or if you move down the continuum, in 2012 we were very successful in getting these OEMs hooked on, because they very much like that process to be well organized. They like our software system, they like our knowledge, they like our training, teaching. So we were able to get contracts with the lot. And some facts and figures, we've done a lot of training with those dealerships. More than 1,000 dealers now been trained, so they have an understanding when their cars come to the floor shop, that what needs to be done and what needs to be affected. We ourselves have installed roughly 1,000 stations, charging stations by now. We are active in 10 countries, so our ambition is Europe, and we basically cover most of Europe already. And of course, as we are a clean company and we are vivid believers of the energy change that's happening, the clean energy element, we of course count what is the savings of carbon dioxide savings are 145,344 kilos, so it's quite a lot. And that's because the cars when they use energy, they use green energy. We sell them green energy certificates. This is the legal structure. The Mobility House is a Zurich-based, a Swiss-based company, and we have management and founders as the main investors. We have Zug and Wermuth as fund investors, and the fund investors deal was closed in the beginning of the year. And we still have Salzburg AG, our original founder and our original concept in the Salzburg region. Therefore, we have three businesses that mainly do the mobility business, which is the legacy business, and one, the Tille München, the Mobility House operation in Munich, where we do the charging business. So that's the company's shape. And our vision, looking into the future, as I already said, is of course we hope there will be more electric-driven cars coming. We learn from the OEMs that they all believe now in plug-in versions of their hybrids, whether it's range extended or not. At least there will be a big push for electric-driven cars, and that's very much because there is a law out there that by 2020 there need to be 95 grams per 100 emission, and that's a number that's given throughout the fleets of those OEMs. They're far above that, so therefore they have to either pay a penalty, which is very significant, or bring down the emission, and that they can best afford and best achieve by electric-driven cars. And they, for us, don't need to be sort of purely electrically driven. They can be range extended or a hybrid, as long as they have clutch that goes into the plug that goes into the clutch. We are in business, and we are believers, and we get strong feedback that that will be the technology of the future. So the first thing that we do is, of course, then with the OEMs and with their sales forces and with their product, moving into the garage and having our charging station, having plugged-in cars. The next element is when there are not only one, but many, and the more the merrier. There is vehicle-to-grid, and that is a power station. You could do that by mobility, i.e. by cars that have batteries. You could do it by stationary batteries. It's all the same. If you take sort of many batteries and combine, you have capacity. And with sufficient capacity, you can become a player for grid stability. Grid stability in Germany used to be no issue because there were plenty of power plants and there was always a big cushion. With the change into the world of solar and wind, that has become much more volatile and much more unstable. There's observations of situations where the grid had to be monitored and actually some energy had to be taken out of the system to get the stability back into this bandwidth. Occasions, I think 3 or 4 in the last decade. It's up to 700 over the last 2 years. So it is becoming a pressing element. So when you have many cars plugged into this clutch, and you have a situation where the grid becomes a little bit unstable, of course, it's easy for the charging to take out energy and thereby stabilizing. It's a little bit more difficult to feed back in. It is feasible and it's technically possible. But if you stop charging, of course, that is also like as if you were supplying energy back into the grid, so which is a more passive way. So what our belief is and what we are driving towards is to become a partner in stabilizing the grid. That is a little bit like a standby facility of credit. If you are big enough and viable, you get paid for that. And it's not only if you use it, it is just the standby facility fees that you can achieve. Of course, our idea is to do more and participate actively in the energy trading, but it does have an energy trading element. Our vision there goes even a step further. Once we have vehicle to grid, and we also have vehicle to home. Of course, smart home plays a role. A battery of a car is the largest user in a household when you plug it in. But also the battery is an uninterrupted power supply for your house. Toyota, which we work with, is very much sold on the idea. Fukuyama has brought that home to the Japanese households very much. They are looking really for having autonomy in their energy supply, and the car gives you autonomy for quite some time. So the vehicle to grid and vehicle to home, smart home, is another ambition that we have. And something that we work with Toyota, who we just won as one of our customers. The vision there is that by 2015, we should have reached break-even. By 2020, if our Chancellor, Mrs. Merkel, is right, there will be 1 million cars only in Germany. There will be plenty more in Europe, so that will give us a strong, strong base of which not only to do the charging and the smart charging, but also to participate in the electricity market, stabilizing the grid, and therefore contributing to the change from fossil to renewable energy. Thank you very much.
Why this company? I think Michel and I, of course, were already believers that electric mobility would take off, but that in itself, I believe, is not a business model to invest in. We've looked at companies that stay on providing services to the end consumers regarding charging. But at the end of the day, the real value is actually in using the battery for other purposes. And we have been really screening for companies in Europe that were exactly doing that. I think in the team of TMH, we found people that actually have a background advising utilities, working for companies that are active in electric engineering. So approaching the whole business model from the other side and immediately saying, okay, there is a battery, there is a power source, how are we going to use that? And in our discussions with them, we found a plausible business model. And we also see now that actually after we invested, that there is much faster than we expected traction from the OEMs towards using the batteries. So, so far it seems that we made a good decision there. At the same time, like I mentioned before, thank you, Michael, that I get 5 minutes. Of course, how I started, we also looked at it from a Tatarstan angle, and one of the issues, even without renewables playing a significant role, grid stability is an issue in Russia, and we believe that TMH may actually be able to provide a solution there as well. So that is one of the angles how we want to use TMH regarding bringing them to Russia. Another aspect is, like Valery showed, there is a large transport efficiency program which will be ongoing in Kazan. And I believe also that the Mobility House can play a role there. So that is the Russia angle, and what we have been discussing also with Christian, but also with his colleagues, that an important element of the future cities. Cities are getting smarter, and people tend to focus on the buildings. But an important element and an important polluter of cities is actually transport. And again, there, a company like the Mobility House may provide for solutions.
Yeah, you mentioned several times in the beginning of your presentation that your ambition is European marketplace. Why limiting yourself to Europe and not looking at other markets?
Very good question. First of all, the competence that we have is in Europe. So therefore, it's a natural for us to use that insight that we have. We're 25 guys and fully worked out, so we are busy in trying to grab that particular landscape. We have looked at places elsewhere. Mega cities, of course, have that issue, and mega cities, of course, Beijing, Shanghai, and others. So far, we have been shy in pursuing that.
My question really related to your revenues. Can you just comment on how your revenues break down across the various offerings that you provide, and how you see that changing over the next few years?
Right. There is nil revenue from grid stability management as yet, because there are too few cars out on the street. So the revenues that we do is purely from the charging element of the business. And there you have two components, one of which is advising and helping those OEMs to get ready, where we implement our IT services, where we teach and train, where we get per country, per training revenue fees, consulting fees. The next level then is when there is more cars coming. Every single selling step will be rewarded. So we have a continuous income from, if BMW sells a car, we will be participating in that because they use the system, the software that we have installed. The biggest revenue element so far is the charging station, which we don't produce ourselves, so we buy it in. So the markup is little, but it is the biggest revenue producer. A charging station costs anywhere between 800 and 1,500 euros per piece, so that's where the money now comes from. And what we perceive is where the big sort of uptake in revenues will come from is when we have more cars and when we start to get vehicle-to-grid effective. That's where we feel the biggest bang for the buck is coming. But it's not only then, because that could be a little late in the game. It is also true that, of course, if people buy a car, they will want to have green energy, so we sell them green energy emission contracts, certificates. We bundle the electricity supply contract. We feel there's great opportunity to, with the car, persuade the car buyer to also change his electricity supply. So we move with the car into a bigger electricity supply contract. That's the more immediate.
Do you see fuel cells as a threat, or would it be something you would embrace?
Fuel cells, we don't know. It's a technology that, of course, there's heavy investment. And if you speak to the OEMs, most of them go at least sort of not only one or the other way, but they develop both. You've got stronger believers than in different places. For us, it's not a threat. We don't have a product to offer for fuel cells. It's not our business remit. So therefore, if that develops well, we would be an onlooker, a happy onlooker to that business. But there is, if Mrs. Merkel is right, and just repeating that number, in 2020, 1 million cars in Germany. That's about 1.5% of the population of cars. So there's ample space for different solutions for green energy in car in car motors, if you will. So it's not a threat, but we don't have a business model for it. Thank you.